Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, striking up the live chat on a Sunday night. And we invite you, of course, to join the live chat and bring your comments, suggestions, and your questions on college football. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. That helps drive the engine. That's it right there. Even if you don't agree, we would like you to subscribe, like, and comment if you truly believe that in watching the videos and watching the live streams that we bring you, some of the best in college football content you will find anywhere with the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the nation with their analysis, my analysis, and of course, we invite you to make your suggestions and your comments and questions and your analysis as you fill out the circle, the voice of college football here at Mark Rogers TV. If you enjoy the audio instead, you can find it there at Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. Just search Mark Rogers TV. So if you check out the audio, you're going to find that most of the audio that is stripped off of the videos is a little bit later in being released and delivered to you. It's not necessarily a priority of mine right now. It should be. The audio podcast could be very effective. And once we get into the season, I'm going to have to make sure that that audio is delivered on time because, of course, the timeliness of the analysis is just that. The games are being played. You want the previews, the predictions when you want them. And the team report for such and such team means something more during the season. It is timely. And of course, the post-game analysis needs to be delivered in the audio in a timely fashion for you. So Google Play, Podbean, iTunes, and Stitcher. You can also like us. You don't have to love us, but certainly like us on Facebook. Just search Mark Rogers TV and give us a like on Facebook, where you can find our audio podcasts posted on a regular basis. And as we build out the platform, we'll, of course, make so much more available to you on Facebook as well. Of course, we're going to strike up the live chat. We've got it here on the side. Whoever has said hi, thank you for joining Mark Rogers TV on a Sunday night. Usually we do our Sunday night show at 4 o'clock Eastern time, but we've got some family in town. We're doing some home renovations, and therefore we went with a late night version on a Sunday night. And I'm usually a little bit more awake at this time of night as well, which is a good thing. All right, I'm going to get into some recruiting. I'm going to let you know what we've got in store in terms of content. And I want to leave it wide open for you guys to make your comments known as we are 5 weeks away from college football. So on this Sunday, right now, as I enjoyed saying last week to all the LSU and Miami fans in particular out there, I enjoyed saying, just imagine, right now, 5 weeks from now, we're going to be LSU Miami, and it's going to be mid-second quarter. And then after the game, we will be on here live with a post-game analysis and to hear from you. I have started to look into various options for call-in capabilities, and there's a number of ways to do that. The correct way to do it is to funnel it through some software and to actually do a phone line, but there are a number of different ways to do it. I could just do it like I have to do it with a number of my guests who can't connect via video if they have issues with the Google Hangouts or the YouTube Live, where I just get them on the cell phone and I just put it through the microphone. So we could do that. I would like to do it a little bit better than that, but we probably will resort to the phone into the mic for the time being. And just here in the next few weeks before the season starts, we will get the call-in capabilities worked out, even if it's very, very low level, entry level, rudimentary, just so we can hear you and I can respond. That's the important thing. And we'll get it sorted out the right way soon. All right. No, I should not be checking my Facebook right now. Let's go to the live chat. I want to run down what's going on in recruiting, but also let you guys know of what content's available right now. So we just wrapped up media days, 2 weeks of media days all the Power 5 conferences. Plus, as you could probably see, I was live at American Conference Media Days last Monday and Tuesday. That was a whole lot of fun as I racked up 29 interviews. I know many of those players are not necessarily household names or somebody that you would like to hear from, as I talked to 2 to 3 players per team. Of note, though, were my interviews with Ed Oliver, arguably the best player in the country from the Houston Cougars, and Mackenzie Milton, quarterback from Central Florida. Of course, led them to 13-0 last year, and a fringe, a periphery, a dark horse Heisman candidate. I also spoke with a number of coaches, including Luke Fickell from Cincinnati, Sonny Dykes, SMU, had a nice conversation with Ken Niumatalolo from Navy, Randy Edsall of UConn, who built the program to a Big East power one time and now struggling to get back in his second go after going to Maryland, coming back to Storrs, Connecticut with the Huskies, 3-9 in his first season in 2017. He had some interesting comments to share with me about building a program. We also spoke with Philip Montgomery of Tulsa. And I'm trying to think what other head coaches we hit. There were a few others in the mix. But a number of head coaches, players, again, the headliners, Ed Oliver of Houston and Mackenzie Milton of Central Florida. 29 interviews from American Conference Media Days. I've released 10 or 12 of those. I started to release those videos and thought, okay, I'm bombarding my Power 5 audience with American Conference interviews. They're probably not that invested. So I'm going to space these out between now and the start of the regular season. And as you can see, we are diving into schedule rankings. Now, this is not necessarily something that I think you guys are craving, schedule rankings. It's actually something that I need to do earlier in the off season, because right now is all about previews and predictions. And once the boys hit the field this week, all the teams in the Power 5 are going to be on the field. That's exciting. Then we'll bring you team reports from those particular camps and our guests who are right there covering the teams day by day. So earlier in the offseason is when I need to do schedule rankings, and we'll try to make that a priority next year. But for right now, I'm committed to my schedule rankings, and I am up to schedule number 59, which was just released. Illinois, the 13th most difficult or second easiest schedule in the Big Ten, number 59 in the nation. Just released that a few hours ago. So check out the schedule rankings. Let me know what you think. Once I'm done with the schedule rankings, and this is going to be just in a couple days, I'm going to release like a zillion videos in the next few days. I'm then diving into, and I was just doing about 2 hours of homework over the last 2 hours. That would make sense. I was doing 2 hours of homework over the last 2 hours. Let me do the math on that. 2 hours of homework. Over the last 2 hours, I was studying the Pac-12, and I put together my previews and predictions for almost the entire Pac-12. I have worked through the Pac-12 North and Colorado. I know you're all waiting patiently with bated breath on my Colorado Buffaloes preview and prediction. So I need to make my way through everybody, and I will get to that as soon as I'm done with the schedule rankings. You're going to see previews on everyone in the Power 5, plus my predictions, record predictions for everyone, my rankings and standings within the conference. And then when we're all done with that, who is going to make the college football playoff, who's going to win the playoff games and win the national championship for 2018. I have 3 teams in mind right now, 3 teams in mind to win the national championship. I have yet to decide who it's going to be. I have 3, 4, 6, 7, 8 teams in mind to make the college football playoff. So I will need to decide on 4 of those teams. I have 8 in mind that I think will be serious competitors to make it to the college football playoff. And I, of course, need to select 4. And we'll do that. So, schedule rankings, we're finishing up. Then we'll get to our previews and predictions. Check out our interviews on American Conference Media Days. I appreciate tons of very positive comments and feedback about our interviews, even though most of you guys are locked in on the Power Five. That appreciated us going to the American Conference Media Days and bringing back some quality interviews. So thank you so much for the kind comments. There were many of them. And once we get into camp, I don't know that there's a whole lot to report on that we haven't talked about ad nauseum about all these teams for the last 7 months that we need to talk about right now. But once camp starts in a couple days, all the teams go into camp in just a few days. Once the news starts to roll out and we can build up some analysis, and there are a number of reporters going to camp each and every day, and we're hearing from coaches and players, then we'll start to hit the teams hard and get you news and analysis and team reports from all the camps. All right, let's check out the live chat. Then I'm going to hit you guys up with some recruiting news from today. You've probably seen it already, but just to get your reaction on another big day from Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs. All right, who's on the chat? Noah. I'm shocked Mark is doing a live show and it's not 9:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. Noah. You should know by now that I'm a late night guy. My job sometimes forces me to do otherwise. 9:30 on a Tuesday. That has never happened. I know I hit it up Friday afternoon, and Noah wasn't too happy with that because he was at work. And I was asking for Noah's work schedule so I could schedule around. We all need to schedule around Noah. Mr. Iverson has a tight work schedule and can't miss the live chat. And Noah, we don't want you to miss a live chat ever. But sometimes it's just not possible. George, looks like Mark fell asleep at the wheel today. Are you talking about the 4:00 Eastern time show? I apologize. Again, that's going to be a loose schedule to a certain extent. I should have let everyone know. As we become a bigger outfit, a bigger platform, a bigger business, we're going to be able to concentrate a little bit more on what we're doing here. And I can't look forward enough to that time. Man, I must look pretty rough today. You guys are mentioning how bad I'm looking. Tuckered out. NCIS Fanatic 21. Good to see you as always, Mr. 12 in the chat. Go Bucks. Hope you guys appreciated the conversation I had earlier this week with Steve Hellwagon from 247 Sports, Bucknuts. Always a great discussion on Ohio State football with him. And he is kind enough to post those conversations to Bucknuts. So that's big time for us. That's a good situation where we have gained enough leverage with Mr. Hellwagon. And without asking, he has posted the videos, probably the last 5 or 6, to 247 Sports. So good news for Mark Rogers TV. LaMarcus Webb, War Eagle. Got an Auburn fan. LaMarcus, I've seen you in here in the past, but probably not very often. So we would like to hear from you. And we will, of course, be within our previews and predictions for the season. And much consideration given to that Auburn-Washington game. That one has me teetering back and forth because it may play into the college football playoff. It's not going to factor into the conference championship for each team. And certainly on Auburn's side, I don't think it much matters whether they beat Washington because of the power of the SEC and the SEC being selected each year, or 2 teams from the SEC. But for Washington in the Pac-12, that is a huge game, monumental game for the reputation of the conference, for all the power indexes involved. That is most likely the best team outside of possibly Notre Dame that entire conference is going to play this year. Think about it. USC and Stanford have Notre Dame. UCLA does play Oklahoma. They're not going to win that game on the road. Who else plays anyone? Oregon plays no one. Washington State plays no one. Washington plays Auburn. Colorado has no one. Utah has no one. Arizona State plays Michigan State. So we basically have three teams that the Pac-12 is playing that would be considered possible national championship contenders outside the Pac-12. Stanford, USC versus Notre Dame, Washington versus Auburn, and Arizona State versus Michigan State. And that's the opportunity that the Pac-12 has to prove that it's better than deplorable. Seth Alexander on the line. Good to see Ryan as always. I'm sure I'm going to get a number of excellent comments out of Ryan. So probably the three most irritating comments I received all in one shot. It was like, bam, I checked out the comments yesterday morning and it was bam, bam, bam. What are these people talking about? Granted, the first comment was retracted and he admitted to being wrong. So I credit this individual. I had not heard from him before. So if you're listening to the chat, I apologize that I didn't catch your handle. But I had made a comment during one of the live streams about Florida being a 5-loss team prior to Urban Meyer taking over. And this guy jumped all over me. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Who are you? Fake news, so forth and so on. I then pointed out to him that Urban Meyer took over in 2005 at Florida. In 2002, 8-5, 2003, 8-5, 2004, 7-5. That sounds like a 5-loss program. 3 consecutive years of losing 5 games before Urban Meyer took over. So I think my statement was kind of dead on. He was kind enough and classy enough and enough of a stand-up guy to say, you know what, you were right. I don't know. I've tried to vanquish that Florida era, pre-Urban Meyer, post-Steve Spurrier, Ron Zook, out of my mind. Sorry, I forgot. Great job. So kudos to him for being a stand-up guy. The next comment I got was for being pro-Ohio State, for saying every year that they should be in the playoff. And so I had to do a search, and I had to go back and look at last year or 2 years ago. I had to look at 2 years ago prior to the 2016 championship playoffs, and the many videos that I cut defending the Penn State position and promoting Penn State as a college football playoff team that in winning the Big Ten and beating Ohio State back head to head, that they should be representing the Big Ten in the college football playoff. And then even the season before, even though I believed, and I think any reasonable fan who follows football and knows talent knows that Ohio State in 2015 was better than Michigan State. They lost the head-to-head. Michigan State won the Big Ten championship game, that they earned the playoff spot. I never debated that. So this guy telling me that I always say Ohio State should be in the playoff because I did it one time, they definitely deserved it in 2014. So did TCU and Baylor. And I made that clear that year that I couldn't make a selection between Ohio State, TCU, and Baylor. And it being the first year that I said, this is the mess. This is the mess that's been created. I didn't say that Ohio State deserved it. Basically, what I said was Florida State's the only team that earned it because they're undefeated, that Ohio State, Oregon, Alabama, TCU, and Baylor all have to fight for those 3 other spots. Then in 2015, I said Ohio State is a better football team than Michigan State, but Michigan State earned the trip to the college football playoff by beating Ohio State head-to-head and winning the Big Ten championship. No, they're not as good as Ohio State, in my opinion, and I think the talent has borne that out, and we saw what Michigan State did in the college football playoff, and we saw Ohio State go and dust off Notre Dame and Michigan, but should not have been in the playoff. Then in 2016, yes, I rallied for Penn State. I supported Penn State. I went on my soapbox for Penn State, but this guy is telling me, Mark, you always say Ohio State should be in the playoff. I did one time in 2017. So I had to send him the links saying Michigan State should be in the 2015 playoff and that Penn State should be in the 2016 playoff. So there's 2. Then the third comment was about the flag that was thrown at the conclusion of the 2002/3 national championship game between Ohio State and Miami that's been debated on this show and all over the internet universe forever. And I merely stated, because this guy was incorrect in saying that the same official who said incomplete threw a flag. The flag came from the back judge, the referee. The line judge just ruled the play. He just watched the ball hit the ground and said incomplete. The flag came from the other official. It's not like the guy said incomplete, reached in his pocket and threw a flag. So let's be accurate on here. That's what I ask of you. Not that we all don't make mistakes and that I haven't uttered incorrect facts at times, although I would love somebody to catch me on one. All right, let's get into the live chat. So those were the three irritating comments that I received in a row, being told that I promote Ohio State as a college football playoff team every year, when in fact I did one out of the last 3 years and could prove that with video links. Number two, that I said that Florida was a 5-loss program before Urban Meyer showed up. And in fact, they had lost 5 games 3 consecutive years before Urban Meyer took the job. And number three, that the same referee ruled incomplete at the conclusion of the Ohio State-Miami game, when in fact, one official, the line judge, incomplete, the back judge, referee, threw the flag. All right. What's going on, you guys? 34 days until we lay a smackdown on Oregon State. OSU in Columbus, September 1st. OSU. Michigan's going to defeat Notre Dame 147-3, according to Noah. Give me Notre Dame in the 143. I'll take it. Mr. 12, I'm so excited to see Nick Bosa and Chase Young. We've got another Buckeyes fan on the line. Too bad 28, of course. Boomer. Oklahoma definitely under consideration for me to win the Big 12, of course, under consideration. But I have been a leaning Texas guy. I've been in that Texas camp most of the offseason thinking I'm going to pull the trigger on Texas winning the Big 12. Well, maybe I'm not. Now that I really review personnel and the strides that Texas has taken but still needs to take to play better than Oklahoma week after week after week after week, I think there's still a gap. All right, Noah's going to be at the Notre Dame-Michigan game. I should have you guys, when you guys go to games, send me reports from the games. Send me clips from the games. If I could work out that from a technical and operational standpoint, that would be phenomenal. Okay, yeah, Donovan Robinson not pleased with the news today concerning one John Emery out of Louisiana, the number 2 rated running back, according to 247 Sports, going to Georgia. Again, he's a hard commit, but there is time for minds to be changed, and we see it all the time. Noah, if Wisconsin recruited at the SEC level, they would never lose. It sure seems like it, doesn't it? So in our last live stream, in which we introduced Mary Peters, I hope you got a chance to see Mary and hear her explain to us how she has arrived at MarkRogersTV and some of her career pursuits and aspirations. But as we discussed on our last live stream, I was going through Pick 6 previews on Twitter, and they have compiled some great information. And to see the number of 4- and 5-star recruits signed by Big Ten teams over the last 5 years, and they compiled these numbers for all Power 5 conferences, but to see the number of 4- and 5-star recruits signed by Ohio State, 91, Michigan, 57, they're number 2 in the Big Ten, and then it keeps tumbling from there to see Wisconsin with 10, and with Maryland at 20. They really coach them up at Wisconsin. Mr. 12, appreciate it, Mark. William Lee, Panther, it's going to be real close. Comes down to Dean and Webb. Where are we talking? Yeah, Ryan, we're going to get to the news, and you guys can chime in on anything that you've seen concerning John Emery in particular. Also, Rion Davis and Makia Tung, hard commits to the Georgia Bulldogs today. Game day has to go to Michigan, Notre Dame. Ned Halim. Ned, welcome to Mark Rogers TV. I've yet to see you on the live chat. Appreciate you jumping on board. Miami fan. For you guys that are joining us for the first time, I would love to know when you found a Mark Rogers TV and how you found us. I would love to know that. That would help us out considerably. How you found us and how long you've been watching. Cash Boy D on the line. Okay, recruiting talk coming. The wholesome ones on the line as well. Mark, the U is making its mark in the 2020-21 recruiting classes. Oh, these kids out of grade school yet? 2021. Tim, the Luke Fickell interview, not yet on video. I posted it on my personal Facebook page, but I've got to download it so I can post it to YouTube. So I was able to get almost all the coaches' interviews on camera with me, as you've seen with Mike Norvell and Ken Niumatalolo, Sonny Dykes, and a few others. But there were a couple in which there were a number of us interviewing a particular coach, so I just stuck my phone in there. And so with Luke Fickell, he was talking to a few other reporters. I caught those comments. They left, and I was able to have a one-on-one with Luke Fickell. I will download that to YouTube and get that posted in the next few weeks. I thought I had some good conversations and comments from Coach Fickell concerning what he learned from Urban Meyer, how he's running his program, what he learned from 2011, in which he was the interim coach there at Ohio State. All right. Wholesome one on the line. Cash Boy D. Miami sucks. Number one Notre Dame fan. If one of these below average SEC teams would hire David Shaw, they would be Alabama by year 4. Okay. Oh. Number one ND fan. Thanks for joining us. As always, I appreciate it. You guys don't know enough how much I appreciate you guys building the channel. Okay. So I preface that before I'm going to just dive in on this David Shaw comment. David Shaw has done a fine job at Stanford. He has maintained what Jim Harbaugh built, which is not easy. Just because it was already built doesn't mean I'm inferring that it's easy to maintain that standard of taking teams to the Rose Bowl and finishing in the top 10 or 20 in the nation, because he's been able to do that. He's won the North Division 4 times in the last 6 years. He's a mainstay in the Pac-12 championship game, which will always put Stanford in play for a possible bid to a college football playoff, because the Pac-12 is going to make it half the time, roughly. That's been the ratio thus far in 4 years. Oregon 2014, Washington 2016. Okay, that said, if David Shaw was hired to coach one of the average SEC teams, so average right now in the SEC would be Kentucky, Texas A&M, Florida last year. Florida might be an exception, of course, with the resources and the recruiting base that they have. That was just a down year. Jim McElwain was not the guy for the job. That's going to be turned around rather quickly. When I think middle tier SEC, so here's the SEC. It's Alabama above and beyond everybody. So leave them in their own category. After that, now I'm not saying this particular year. I'm not saying 2018 only or even 2017. I'm talking about program strength, power, talking about winning overall, your recruiting base, your money, facilities, resources, fan base, all of it, which should equal winning. That next tier below Alabama is Auburn, LSU, Florida, Georgia. Of course, right this second, it's Georgia. But overall, Auburn, Georgia, Florida, LSU. Could make a case for Tennessee, and I know Tennessee's awful. They just lost all 8 games in the conference. But again, if you follow me, Tennessee's in that discussion as an SEC power. Okay, mid-level. I'm going to drop Tennessee into that tier. That middle tier is Mississippi State. It's Texas A&M. Of course, the Aggies have a shot to do better with the Jimbo. Mississippi State, Texas A&M, Kentucky, South Carolina. I know the Gamecocks jumped up with 8 wins and then the bowl win last year. Again, I'm not talking about 1 year. The mid-tier, when I think mid-tier SEC, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm certainly not, but give me your opinion. South Carolina, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, that's the mid-tier of the SEC. So you're saying that if David Shaw took over one of those programs, if David Shaw went to South Carolina, a mid-tier SEC team, that they would be Alabama by year 4. We'll never know. Number one ND fan, but I can't see it. I can't see it. All right. NCIS fanatic. I like Luke Fickell. I was very critical of his coaching ability in 2011 and in 2013 with the way our defense was performing against Michigan State and Clemson, but I've really grown to like him. So Urban Meyer's made the same comments concerning Luke Fickell. He had to take on Luke Fickell as an assistant. It was part of the deal. Luke Fickell had done the job that he did as an assistant under Jim Tressel, which was outstanding. And then he hung around to maintain the program and move it through a transition time and a very difficult time. So out of loyalty and based on what the university provided, Luke Fickell maintained his position on Urban Meyer's staff. But that was not a very good defense in 2013, as you mentioned. Braxton Miller played out of his mind. Carlos Hyde, the receivers, the offense was great. The defense was talented, but awful against Clemson and Michigan State, as you mentioned. Awful in spots. Most of the game, awful. Breakdowns all over the place. And Luke Fickell came under fire from Urban Meyer. And they even played horribly against a 5-7 Michigan team that year. Michigan 2013, 7-6 Michigan team in 2013 that took them to the last play of the game, a 2-point conversion in which Michigan could have sent that game to overtime, but they opted for the 2-point conversion for the win and missed it. And Ohio State won that game 42-41. Michigan ripped them to shreds. So you're right. Luke Fickell was not a favorite of Urban Meyer's when he took the job through 2013, but quickly gained Urban Meyer's respect as a man, as a coach. We talked about that in the interview, so we'll get that to you. All right, what else do we have on here? It's okay, you don't need to drop an ND video. We know they're going 11-1 at worst. Number one ND fan. So I love Notre Dame in just about every game this season. I just think the grind of the schedule is probably going to drag them down to 9-3. It just happens to them. I don't think they're that ultra talented to weed through that schedule, but I will get to it. But I know what you mean. When you look week to week through the Notre Dame schedule, I'm thinking the same thing. Oh, they're better than them. They're better than them. They're better than them. They're 11-1. They are going to the college football playoff. When you play week after week against that Notre Dame schedule, and it is a brutal schedule that I'm going to have very highly ranked. We'll see if they can make it through. Mr. 12 says Dwayne Hatkins will light it up. Colorado will be the 2018 national champions. You heard it here first. Probably heard it here first and heard it here last. I hope. Cash Boy D, who's their quarterback? Come on, Cash Boy D. You're a bigger fan than that. Ohio State quarterback. I know he hasn't played much, and you were gearing yourself up for the Iron Bowl at the time that he was taking out Michigan in the fourth quarter. I know that. I get that. But that's why we're here, to educate. One of the reasons. I'm guessing Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State. I'm guessing those are the three teams that I'm considering for the national championship. Man, I would love to go with a wild card. I would love to say, okay, I pinpointed the team that's going to crash the party. I pinpointed Iowa. I pinpointed Oregon. And yes, it's run through my mind. Can Iowa somehow win the West? They have a favorable schedule. They have Wisconsin at home. So they beat Wisconsin head to head. They make it through the schedule. They have a light non-conference schedule, as they typically do. They've got Iowa State at home. Okay, Iowa gets it done. They only lose one game and they pull off an upset in the Big Ten championship game. No, that's way too many ifs to go through. Oregon, same thing. Oregon does not have to play USC. They've got Stanford and Washington at home. They play nobody. I mean, nobody. It's ridiculous how easy their non-conference schedule is. It's deplorable. It's pathetic. It's an embarrassment. Oregon and Washington State, they play no one. So Oregon's going to go 3-0 non-conference. Then they've got Stanford and Washington at home. They don't have to deal with USC. Is Oregon going to break through? I'm looking for that team. Believe me, I don't want to be chalk. I don't want to result in chalk with my predictions. I would rather not. But man, it's just tough not to see a Clemson ACC championship definitely there. That's the number one locked up conference, in my opinion, the one that's the most predictable. And then this Georgia-Alabama tug of war. They may get two in again. It may be the same thing as last year, but take out the West Coast and the Big 12 and insert Ohio State. And you've got your four. That might be the four. But Ohio State, boy, they've got to deal with the toughest of those schedules between the elite teams. Penn State, Michigan, Michigan State, TCU. Although Ohio State has a light touch this year in the Big Ten West. Minnesota, Purdue, Northwestern, off the top of my head, I believe. Leon won't be Ohio State. Leon, don't be so sure. It's a loaded roster. It's loaded. And if Dwayne Haskins plays reasonably well, not great, he's got to play really good. Big plays. This is what Dwayne Haskins needs to do. He pretty much needs to do what LSU needed when they had those great teams, really talented teams. They weren't great, really talented teams between 2011 and about 2014, minus the Mettenberger years. So this is Brandon Harris. This is post Mettenberger. What they needed, because they had running backs and wide receivers and offensive line and of course defense. They needed the guy to complete 60% of his passes and use his legs and explode about 5 times a game downfield. 3 to 5 big plays, like 30 to 50-yard plays downfield. Be efficient, move the chains. You don't need to be Tom Brady or Peyton Manning. But avoid the turnovers, big plays, move the chains, let the defense win. That's what Ohio State needs out of Dwayne Haskins, at least pre-playoff. Maybe the playoff, they'll need much more. All right. Wholesome One, thanks for jumping on board. We appreciate it. We enjoy seeing you. We'll look forward to having you on soon. As soon as we've got anything out of Miami camp, Wholesome One, track me down, let me know. We'll get you on here and we'll deliver a report from Miami camp. Oh, yeah. NCI is Fanatic 21. My bad. Nebraska's on the Ohio State schedule. Of course, we've talked about that a number of times. Nebraska in Columbus for another shellacking, most likely. But Scott Frost pulling the controls. Maybe Nebraska hangs in it a little bit longer. Valdez jumping in with Brent Venables is available for the right team, but he won't take any job. If Clemson doesn't win the ACC, that will honestly be the biggest surprise of the season. I agree, Ryan. Okay. Okay. Am I screwing this up with the number one ND fan? North Dakota. Is it North Dakota? I very much apologize here if it is. You got to let me know. Who's your team? ND. I see ND. It's all Notre Dame for me. Miami beating Clemson wouldn't be the biggest surprise ever. Cash boy, but it wasn't exactly at Arkansas and Northwestern. The man went to 2 recruiting giants. Wholesome one, can you please explain the importance of assistant coaches are to the progression of the program? Okay, we'll get to that. I don't think regular fans know that. Mark Richt's play calling is a liability. Valdez going to get us started on that one again. We've discussed that many times. What do you think OU has to do to get a better defense? James Brown. All right, let's stop right there. Oklahoma, in terms of metrics last year, had the 65th to 70th rated defense in all the major categories and the advanced metrics. Not a good defense. Now, they did face some explosive offenses that had something to do with that, and with their style of play, creating more drive opportunities for the opponent. So that's somewhat skewed. I think that Oklahoma had better than the 65th or 70th best defense in the country last year. Top 40. So to win a national championship, they most likely have to be better than top 40. They don't have to be elite, but they need to be better. So it starts with the Jimmies and Joes. Valdez. Was it? No, it was James. James Brown. That James Brown or that James Brown? We got the James Brown, the legend James Brown. We also have the Texas quarterback that pulled off the big upset in the inaugural Big 12 championship game against Nebraska, of course. 37-27. Back to Oklahoma. Athletes. Sure, it has something to do with scheme, but the Big 12 is not recruiting defensive players, especially as well as the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 10. The numbers just aren't there. Oklahoma, just go back over the last 5 years and see the number of defensive players that make their way to the NFL from the Oklahoma defense. It's not many. And you don't need 9 or 10 NFL defenders, but you need 3 or 4. And Oklahoma just hasn't recruited at that level. And I would think that those guys are in Texas. I don't know why they're not recruiting at that level, but that's what it is. I don't see anything in the scheme. If somebody who watches Oklahoma football, too bad 28, you could chime in on this one. If you see something out of Oklahoma's defense schematically that doesn't make sense or add up, maybe that's the case. But yeah, Mike Stoops, there should be some pressure placed on him. They have an elite offense before and after Baker Mayfield, and the defense is not asked to shut teams down, but to be better. Georgia did not score on anybody last year like they scored on Oklahoma. Go through the Georgia season, and they didn't put up points like that at that rate in the second half against marginal teams in the SEC like they did against Oklahoma. So that needs to be addressed for the Sooners to truly compete at the highest level. And I know that they came that close to playing in the national championship game last year, but I don't believe that they can sustain that kind of offensive performance. They had a generational player, especially for them, in Baker Mayfield. They're not going to have that in the foreseeable future. Clemson will crush Miami again. Neither the Big 12 nor the Pac-12 plays any defense. Washington, defensively strong. USC has been strong decent last year. Washington had the one defense in the Pac-12 that was really good. Oregon has defensive players. They have about 5 or 6 guys that are standout. USC, Arizona's awful on defense. Arizona State's awful on defense. Yeah, the rest of them bad. Washington State's improved considerably for that conference. Cal's been bad. Colorado was atrocious last year. I just ran numbers on Colorado, just worked on their preview numbers. Colorado went from, I don't have it here, in that miracle aberration of a season for Colorado in 2016. They were in the advanced metrics, top 25 in the nation in total defense. For the advanced metrics, they descended to 109 last year. They were awful. Yes, everybody's bad on defense in the Pac-12, minus Washington is legit. The numbers speak to top 10, but they're legit top 20 defensively. USC's top 20 to 25 defensively and have been. May not be quite as good this year. And UCLA is decent on defense at times. Of course, Stanford's decent, and Stanford was not nearly as good last year as they have been. The Stanford offense was much better last year, more explosive thanks to one guy, but the defense was down, and the Stanford defense may not be able to recover this year. A lot of people like Stanford to move on to the college football playoff and win the Pac-12, but I don't necessarily see it. I think they have too many issues defensively, and KJ Costello has yet to prove to be a big-time quarterback. Stickman in the game, huh? He's in there somewhere. Ricky joins us. I've been to Boulder, Colorado twice. Very nice place. TCU plays defense. They're the standard in the Big 12 over the last 5 years defensively. Cash Boy, if you look at what Texas did last year with the likes of Poona Ford, Malik Jefferson, Deshaun Elliott, they were extremely good on defense last year. I have some concerns about Texas replacing those stalwarts on defense with some very, very, very talented guys, but inexperienced guys this year. As we've mentioned a number of times, they recruited and signed 5 of the very best defensive backs in the country, and about 2 to 3 of them need to step in and make an impact this year. Texas, TCU, the exceptions to the Big 12 defensive and narrative. All right, anything I missed here? Too bad 28. Looking at our playoff era and the teams ranked 1 through 4 in the preseason AP poll and ESPN's Power Index, generally 2 of those teams make the playoffs and 2 do not. We'll see if that holds up this year. And that's a very interesting point. So let's think about that. So in 2017, out of Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma, what do we have? So we're saying that Alabama and Clemson were in the top 4 to start the season. Oklahoma and Georgia were not. And the 2 teams that probably were Ohio State and maybe Washington. In 2016, of course, I'm guessing Alabama and Clemson were in the top 4 to start the season. Ohio State was extremely close, although they were young. Washington kind of surprised a lot of people, although they didn't surprise me. I had them rated as a top 4 team and predicted that they would make the college football playoff in 2016. 2015, Michigan State and Oklahoma would have been the teams not in the top 4. So it's an interesting process to go through. Where the college football playoff teams were ranked to start the season and see how much of an aberration it was, that if anybody really jumped out of nowhere. So in 2014, Ohio State was a top 10 team. Alabama, of course, was right up there near the top, if not number 1 in the country. Oregon as well, and Florida State as well, coming off a national championship season and returning its quarterback. In 2015, Alabama, Clemson were there. Clemson may not have been rated quite that high coming off a season in which they lost 3 games in 2013 or 2014. Yeah, that's a show for another time, and we've done it. I know that we've run through the BCS era to see, okay, Auburn, Oregon played in the 2010 national championship game. Where did they start the season? How highly were they projected before the season? And which two teams or top four teams from the preseason poll didn't come close to reaching the national championship game, or in this era, the college football playoff? It's an interesting exercise. It shows us that most of the time chalk wins out, but we do have the Auburn of 2013 that was 3-9 and 0-8 in the SEC in 2012, fired its coach, brought in Gus Malzahn, made it to the college football championship game at that time, the BCS title game. And yeah, I don't have the numbers in front of me, and I'm not going to look them up because you guys would be bored as I sit here and scramble through all of that. But some of you have looked this up. Too bad 28. In 2017, Alabama was the only one. FSU was number 3. Clemson, OU, and Georgia were not top 5. Clemson was not in the top 5 preseason 2017. Alabama was 1. Ohio State was 2. Florida State was 3. Washington? USC? Penn State? Maybe? USC didn't come close to making the national championship in 2012 after starting out number 2. No, they didn't. USC was playing in the Sun Bowl in the snow at the end of that season and lost to Georgia Tech by 2 touchdowns and finished 7-6. USC was 4 in 2017's preseason poll. Clemson was 5. Okay, you guys are cutting this a bit close. So I appreciate the research, but we're trying to look for aberration here. We're trying to look for, okay, what teams came out of nowhere? What team was ranked 22nd in the preseason poll that made it to the college football playoff? What team was ranked number 3, like a Florida State last year, that free falled out of nowhere and were nowhere close to a college football playoff at 7-6 and 3-5 in the ACC? Okay, Clemson, I understand they weren't in the top 4 preseason, but they were number 5. So they were still considered one of the best teams in the country, and they made it through. Georgia was 15. Good call by Ryan. Georgia coming off the Liberty Bowl win over TCU, losing 5 games, going 8-5 in Kirby Smart's first season, went from 15 to top 4 in the country and almost won the national championship. Iowa 2015. I don't know, Ricky, what they were preseason that year, but considering what Iowa typically is projected to do, it's 8-4, 7-5, probably fringe top 25, but probably not in the poll in 2015. Of course, Iowa took advantage of a cakewalk of a schedule. They did beat Wisconsin, and they came within LJ Scott inching the ball over the goal line to lose 12-10. Is that the final score against Michigan State in 2015? Or most likely Iowa would have been the sacrificial lamb for Alabama, and most likely would have been the biggest underdog of the playoff era. Boca Siga Bay logging on. Thanks for letting us know. Iowa and Michigan State. Notre Dame 2012. I don't know what we're asking here. Iowa was unranked. Okay, thank you, Buckeye State Sports in 2015. Not in the preseason top 25. Yeah, Michigan State beat Iowa 13-9. You know what? Do I dig in on this? Yeah, I just think you guys are just going to be way ahead of me, and if I've got the live chat here to track here, but maybe we do it. Let's run through this. 2017 college football preseason poll. And let's see if we can go through year to year. 2017 preseason. Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Florida State 3, USC 4. So Bama makes the playoff. Ohio State wins the Big Ten, just misses the playoff. Florida State free falls to 7-6. USC wins the Pac-12 but misses the playoff. Okay. So one of the four made it. Ohio State and USC relatively close. If not, should have been there. They won conference championships. Clemson 5. Of course, they made it, won the ACC. Penn State at 6 came razor close. So that's a good projection preseason. Penn State at 6. They finished 6 to 8 in the country. Oklahoma at 7. So again, I don't consider that a huge aberration that Oklahoma won the Big 12, went to the playoff, and they were preseason number 7, but they were the highest rated Big 12 team preseason. So they generally fulfilled expectations. Washington at 8 generally fulfilled expectations. Wisconsin at 9. Oklahoma State at 10. Didn't quite reach that level after losing some games in the Big 12. They did win their bowl game, lost to TCU, Oklahoma, and Iowa. No. Oklahoma State lost to TCU, Oklahoma. Can't remember the other game they lost. West Virginia, I think. So anyway, Oklahoma State went 10-3, so close to number 10. Michigan at 11, so they dropped down to 8-5. They were not a final top 25 team, so a bit off on that. Auburn 12, that's close. LSU 13, that's close. They went 9-4. Stanford at 14. They went 9-5. They finished 20th in the country. So the 9-5 doesn't sound impressive from Stanford, but they beat Washington. They beat Notre Dame. They lost the Pac-12 championship game. They lost by 2 points to TCU in the Alamo Bowl. That's why they still were ranked as high as 20th in the postseason poll, even though they went 9-5. Georgia at 15, we just talked about what they did, obviously almost winning the national championship. Louisville at 16. They lost a bowl game, finished 8-5, so not quite at that level. Florida at 17. There's your aberration, 4-7 finish. Miami at 18. They finished a little bit higher than that after a 10-3 campaign. South Florida at 19, finished right about there. Kansas State at 20, not quite at that level, but they did go 8-5. Virginia Tech at 21. They went 9-4. If I miss a record once in a while, it's just because I'm coming up with these at the top of my head. West Virginia 22. They went 7-6. They lost their bowl game to Utah. Texas at 23. That's pretty close. Texas went 7-6, won their bowl game. Washington State at 24. That's pretty close. I don't think they were ranked in the final top 25, but they could have been at 9-4 after losing to Michigan State in the Holiday Bowl and Tennessee. Whoo! From preseason number 25 to 0-8 in the SEC. So the preseason top 25 is pretty accurate. At least it was in 2017. Florida State, not close. Michigan, somewhat off. Georgia, somewhat off. Second best team in the country after starting number 15. Louisville, somewhat off. Florida, off. Tennessee, way off. That's not many out of preseason top 25. So I'm going to check the chat, see what you guys have, and then we're going to move on to 2016. We could be here all night looking at 1994. All right. I haven't ever won yet, which shows importance shouldn't be placed on seeding. I don't know what you guys are talking about. UCF national champions in 2017. Savage Dogs, you can believe that. All right. I don't know what you guys have going, but we're going to keep this up. Why is an 18 playoff so much more popular than a 6 team? And anyone who suggests auto bids is just wrong. My man. Okay. We can't go to a 6-team playoff. We can't do it. No. Right now, we have a situation with a 4-team playoff and we have 5 conferences. And sometimes, like last year, we definitely have a deserving team that finished second in its conference or kind of third, like Alabama. So if we're putting 2 teams from the same conference, then we really have an issue. Or if we have Notre Dame play into this, we really have an issue. 5 conferences, 4 spots. Okay. If we move to 6, I understand we have solved the problem and we can maintain a spot for all 5 conferences. And then we can either give a spot to the group of 5 or we can give it to the best non champion. But we have an issue with buys. We cannot give buys to teams. We're going to have as much controversy. And I don't care about the controversy. That's actually good for my channel. What I care about is fairness and equity. Can you imagine okay, number one ND fan, go through the college football playoff era, and that may not be quite a big enough sample size with only 4 years. So take it before that even. You decide who would get the buys. And believe me, it's not easy and it's not fair, and it wouldn't be right to give that much of an advantage to 2 teams. That takes what we're doing now and makes it almost as bad. What would be corrected is giving opportunity to teams that earned it. But to give 2 buys, you tell me who gets the buys. Go through it 2014, 15, 16, 17. You tell me who gets the buys, and I will tell you why some other team deserved a buy just as much as one of the teams that you gave a buy to. All right. In 2014, Oklahoma was number 3, but fell to 8-5. That was the year that they lost to Clemson in the Russell Athletic Bowl. They were stampeded, and then they met Clemson in the playoff game the year after and were ripped up in the second half, 40-21, I believe. Okay. You guys were talking about recruiting. Okay. TCU was ranked number 2 in the preseason poll, but finished 9-3 or 10-2. TCU was ranked in the preseason poll. Anyway, let's go back. So we just did 2017, and we saw where Florida State free fall from number 3. Clemson was number 5. So while only one of the 4 preseason teams in the top 4 made the final 4 of the college football playoff, Clemson was right there. And Oklahoma was right there. And Georgia at 15 elevated itself, and we saw where the top 25 missed a few times, but pretty accurate. Now let's go to 2016. So this is the year. Of course, we had Alabama, Clemson. Then we had Ohio State and Washington. Preseason top 4 in 2016. Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, Florida State. Well, Alabama made it. Clemson made it. Oklahoma in 2016, of course, lost to Ohio State and Houston, still won the Big 12, finished in the top 5 in the country. So good projection from the media there. And Florida State at number 4. So an interesting poll there where about half the people were split on Clemson, Florida State winning the ACC and getting to the playoff. Florida State lost to Clemson, really good game. Missed out on the ACC championship game, beat Michigan in the Orange Bowl, and finished 7th or 8th in the country. So still a good projection on Florida State, but 2 of the 4 made it, Alabama and Clemson. LSU was preseason number 5. Of course, they lost to Wisconsin right out of the gate at Lambeau Field and finished 8-5. Ohio State number 6, they made the playoff despite not winning the Big Ten. Michigan at 7, almost won the Big Ten championship, lost to Ohio State by that much. Stanford at number 8. This is in 2016. So Stanford, what did Stanford do? I'm losing it on Stanford in 2016. That's the team that played North Carolina and Mitch Trubisky in the Sun Bowl. So they weren't, they did not make it to the conference championship game. They, of course, got annihilated by Washington, and they also lost to Washington State. So Stanford was at 8, Tennessee at 9. They finished 9-4. Notre Dame at 10. That was the team that went 4-8. So the voters missed it completely there. Ole Miss at 11. This was in 2016. So that's coming off. That's coming off the team that beat Oklahoma State in the Sugar Bowl, blasted them. 2016, Ole Miss. And you guys are going to have to fill me in on Ole Miss in 2016. I don't remember off the top of my head. 2016 Ole Miss. They did not finish in the top 25. They did win a bowl game, right? I'm blanking on Ole Miss right now. In 2016, Michigan State 2016. Okay, number 12 to start the season. That was the 3-9 team. TCU at number 13. They plummeted to 6-7 after losing to Georgia in the Liberty. Washington at number 14. There's your other college football playoff team. Number 14 made it to the top 4, won the Pac-12. Houston at 15. UCLA at 16. So that's the Houston team that beat Florida State the previous year. Was decent. UCLA at 16. They free-falled. Iowa at 17, coming off the undefeated regular season the year before. They got back to their 8-5 ways. Georgia at 18. That's a team that went to the Liberty Bowl and won, that went 8-5 in Kirby Smart's first season. Louisville at 19. That's the team that lost to LSU in the Citrus Bowl. USC at 20. They, of course, USC at 20, did not win the Pac-12 championship, but won their last 8 or 9 games, won the Rose Bowl over Penn State, finished in the top 5 or 6 in the country. Oklahoma State at 21. That's the team that crushed Colorado in the Alamo Bowl, but did not win the Big 12. North Carolina at 22 went to the Sun Bowl. They were decent. Baylor at 23. That's the team that got just annihilated North Carolina in its bowl game, and they were good. Oregon at 24. Okay, the Oregon team, that's the team that plummeted to 4-8. So that was completely wrong. And Florida at 25. Of course, that Florida team went to the SEC championship game against Alabama, but they weren't very good. So that was so preseason 2016, Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, Florida State. That was the top 4. 2 of them made it. Ohio State at 6 preseason, made the college football playoff. Penn State, nowhere to be found, won the Big Ten. USC, nowhere to be found, won the Rose Bowl. Ole Miss, Michigan State, TCU, 11, 12, and 13 in the preseason poll, all had bad years. Michigan State 3-9, TCU lost 7 games. Washington goes from number 14 preseason to the college football playoff. 2015, your preseason poll in 2015, of course, Ohio State coming off the championship, number 1, TCU at 2. Okay, NCIS Fanatic 21, I know what you're talking about now. Preseason 2015, TCU at number 2, Alabama at 3, Baylor at 4. Interesting top 4 there. Of course, Alabama was the only team that made it. Ohio State missed the playoff because they lost to Michigan State. TCU did not make the playoff, of course, neither did Baylor. The 2015 playoff was Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, Michigan State. Well, Michigan State did start number 5 in the nation preseason. And where is Clemson? They're number 12. The preseason top 10 in 2015 was Ohio State. They just missed the playoff, lost to Michigan State. TCU, which in 2015 I think that was a team that beat Oregon in the Alamo Bowl. They had a decent season. Alabama at 3, won the national championship in 2015. Baylor at 4. That was the team that I don't remember what they did in 2015. I don't think they did much good. I think that might have been the team that won their first 6, then lost their last 6. Michigan State at 5 made the college football playoff. Auburn at 6 in 2015. They didn't do anything. They lost 4 or 5 games. Oregon at 7. They went to the Alamo Bowl. They weren't a factor. USC at 8 in 2015. That was the team. They went 9-3. They lost to Wisconsin in the Holiday Bowl. Florida State, Georgia at 9, Florida State at 10. Neither one of them were factors. So, yeah, Michigan State jumped from 5 into the playoff. And the other playoff team in 2015 was Clemson, that jumped from 12 to the top 4. All right, 2014. And we'll stop here. This is the beginning of the college football championship game and playoff. 2014 preseason top 4. This becomes more fun as we go back because some teams jump into the mix that we forgot were good. Florida State number 1, Alabama 2, Oregon 3, Oklahoma 4. That's preseason 2014. Florida State went undefeated, made it back to the playoff, lost to Oregon in the Rose Bowl. Alabama number 2, of course, they won the SEC, got back to the playoff. Oregon at number 3 made it to the championship game. So really, this poll was very close because number 4 was Oklahoma, but number 5 was Ohio State. They won the national championship. Auburn at 6. That team lost to Wisconsin in the Outback Bowl. They went 8-5. UCLA at number 7. I think that was the team that went to the Alamo Bowl and beat Kansas State. Michigan State at number 8 was very good. Only lost to Ohio State and somebody else, I believe Oregon, and beat Baylor in the Cotton Bowl. South Carolina at number 9. That was in 2014. They finished in the top 5 to 10 in the country. Yeah, unless that was the first bad South Carolina team. Maybe it was. Yeah, that was the team that started number 9, got ripped by Texas A&M and Kenny Hill on opening night and lost 7 games. Baylor finished number 10. They started number 10. That team lost to Michigan State in the Cotton Bowl. So, Florida State made the playoff. They started at number 1. Alabama made the playoff. They started at number 2. Oregon made the playoff. They started at number 3. Ohio State made the playoff. They were number 5. Oklahoma is the only team that didn't make it from the top 4. And in 2015, they lost to Clemson that year in a bowl game, and they did not win the conference because, of course, that was the TCU Baylor year. All right, folks. South Carolina finished 7-6 in 2014, their first bad season. Yeah, that was the team that after winning 11 games 3 consecutive years was Steve Spurrier's last full season, 7-6, 20-14. They beat Miami in the Independence Bowl that year. All right, and I wanted to get your thoughts on the recruiting news of the day out of Georgia in particular. So the Georgia Bulldogs got 3 hard commits today. The number 2 rated running back in the country, John Emery out of Louisiana, 31st ranked player overall out of 247 Sports. The number 5 linebacker, Rion Davis out of Florida, number 68 overall player, and an athlete. I think they're all athletes, right? The athlete, which typically turns out to be a wide receiver or defensive back, Makia Tongue out of Louisiana, out of Baton Rouge, stolen right under Ed Ogeron's nose, goes to the Georgia Bulldogs. And this Emery commit comes off of course, Zamir White and James Cook, two of the top 3 running backs taken by Georgia in this last recruiting period. Texas A&M got a great commit from a cornerback, Jeffrey Carter, who runs a 4.36 according to ESPN, at number 3 cornerback in the country. They also have 12 ESPN 300 commits signed or committed, hard committed for 2019, including the number 1 safety in the class, Brian Williams. And good news for the North Carolina Tar Heels as they try to rebound from 3-9, 1-7 in the ACC. They were just a dumpster fire. Antonio Williams, who was a pretty productive back for Ohio State last year, 290 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns, is immediately eligible to play for North Carolina this year at running back. That's the recruiting news for the day. Had fun looking at the preseason top 25 polls from the last 4 years and seeing how those teams finished and who came out of nowhere. Virtually no one came out of nowhere to make the college football playoff. So that's what makes it difficult in seeing who is projected to win this year, to try to find that team that may make an Auburn kind of run. And that's a stretch, an Auburn kind of run in 2013 from 3-9 all the way to the BCS championship game, but something close to that. Again, I'm thinking Oregon, I'm thinking Iowa, I'm thinking Texas. Those would be the 3 that come to mind that have the best chance of going from marginal, decent, top 25 to 30 to college football playoff this year. Those are the 3. Do you have anybody else? Oregon, Iowa, Texas. Those are the possibilities. Bama gets the number 1 recruiting class again. It looks like it. Great haul for the Dogs today. Yes. All right, Panther Pro 22, who will get the number 1 recruiting class? I think Georgia's in line to possibly grab it. Does it matter? If you're in the top 5, I don't know that it matters who gets the number 1 class. It's Georgia, it's Alabama right now battling for 1 and 2, and I think they have by far and away the top classes. Ohio State is right there as well. I've enjoyed the conversation on a Sunday night, late night. I will expect to see you guys sometime tomorrow. I will work on the timing. I know that I've committed in the past over this summer session to 6 o'clock Eastern time on Monday night, but that depends on what's happening around here at the Mark Rogers TV household. So we will see you guys soon, and it will be sometime on Monday. Meanwhile, I'm working on all sorts of predictions and previews. Check out our schedule rankings, subscribe, like, and comment to help us bring you the best content in college football online with the best bloggers, writers, and broadcasters in the business, and including analysis from myself and conversation from you. Yes, we will get a call-in number and get that squared away in the next few weeks. I'll even go offline right now and look it up. There's a few options. I don't know, to go with Skype or go with a number of other. There's a number burner, I think is the name of something else. I don't know what to do there, but we'll figure it out, and we'll get a show here that will be able to accommodate phone calls from you. All right, guys, appreciate the time. Appreciate the support. We will see you on Monday at some point. Otherwise, schedule rankings are coming your way, 58 all the way up to number 1. Check out the first 13 posts. The 70th rated schedule all the way up to number 59 are released. We will see you soon right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football.